Sean is okay there? Am I in too much darkness or light?
Good. Just be quiet. I'm labor here. Stand by. Good day and welcome to yet another installment of Recount Update. This program is a special series of discussions brought to you by the People's Progressive Party Civic. I'm your host, Michael Gordon, and with me is Ms. Gail Teixiera. I have the distinct honor of discussing some of these issues, the recount and the peripheral issues surrounding the recount and the shenanigans, of course. So welcome to this program, Gail.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for having me and hello to all your viewers.
All right, let's begin with the count itself. Of course, deliberately so, a range of issues have been introduced to overshadow the reason for being at the Artichoke Conference Center. If I could begin first with the issue of the slothful nature of the count and the seemingly positive common sense in allocating stations to complete, specifically Region 4, which has the most ballot boxes to be counted.
Well, I think that everyone has recognized that there is a deliberate attempt to ensure that Region 4 drags on as long as possible. The fact that even though Region 3 and 7 finished yesterday, freeing up approximately, I think it was 3 stations, that they in fact went and opened up Region 10 and only gave one additional station to Region 4. The fact that Region 4 has 50% of their votes still to be counted. And I think that my report from today is that today they seem to be going rather even slower than before in Region 4. So I don't think anybody is fooled anymore that there is a deliberate attempt to slow down Region 4 and to make sure Region 4 is the last man standing as on March the 5th and March the 13th. And I think this is again to allow the APNU AFC to cause confusion and to fool their supporters that they're winning all the time. And so I think that GCOM has, when all this is done, will face an enormous assault on what and the way in which they've contributed to the pain and anguish of Guyanese people now in the 87th day of waiting for results for these elections. GCOM is well aware of all this. The chairman is well aware of all these things, and yet seems to be incapable or reluctant to remedy these situations and ensure that Region 4 has probably about 7 or 8 boxes so that it will complete in the required time. And
7 or 8 stations.
Yeah, I don't think it's impossible. You have Region 3 and 7 freed up. 8 and 9 will probably be freed up by this weekend. All those stations can be assigned to Region 4 or majority of them and leave one back for Region 10, Region 6, and therefore be Region 6, 4, 6, and 10 being counted in this week. The other issue is Michael, which is worrying me and I think a lot of us, is that why is GCOM taking so long to decide, to make a decision on how much longer is the extension? Dr. Jagdeo met with the chairman, I think it is almost 2 weeks ago, expressing the support of the PPP to agree to the extension to June the 7th, which he felt and the PPP feels is reasonable and could be done. And this was before we saw an increase in the number of boxes being counted, as in the last week, where we've seen 83, 88, 90 boxes being counted. And yet we are hearing from Alexander, who appears to be the mouthpiece for the chairman, that they're talking about June the 13th and that Mr. Lowenfield will need another 4 to 5 days to compile the observation report and the report to GCOM in order for them to decide on the declaration. This is so obscene and so, vulgar and brazen attempt by Mr. Alexander. And if this is what is happening in the GCOM in terms of the issues, then this is really a disgrace for the Ghana Elections Commission. Mr. Lowenfield on March the 5th, when Mr. Mingo declared the results of Region 4 on the, when he ran up the balcony and Valda followed and they signed the declaration for Region 4, Mr. Lowenfield quickly put all the reports together on March the 6th and gave them to GCOM. On March the 13th, when at midnight they finished Region 4, and Mr. Mingo again put forward his discredited results. Mr. Mingo again on the very next day, March the 14th, had the report sent to the GCOM. Why is it now that he needs 4 to 5 days to prepare the reports? What's he doing between March the 6th and now, where each report that is finished, Region 1, Region 2, Region 5, he should be compiling in the meantime? So this is just a level of obscenity and vulgarity and just baseness that really flies in the face of democracy in this country.
If I dare say, I am also of the view that to a great extent it flies in the face of common sense. And as a Guyanese, I feel insulted by the way this has been going, especially in the context of all the other things the people of Guyana has been facing. There's a global pandemic, and we have not been spared by all means. And the Guyana Elections Commission seems to be operating as if it's on an island by itself. The paucity or the lack of urgency to address an important national issue such as an election, which in essence puts in place a legitimate government which can sufficiently and effectively address the needs and the concerns of the people. Yesterday we heard President-elect Dr. Irfan Ali outline a number of measures in terms of flattening the curve for the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as measures that could be implemented, that will be implemented to assist citizens as they attempt, as families and as individuals and as households, to battle the pandemic. The concern really is GCOM operating in isolation from everything else that has been happening around it.
Yes, that's true, but also there's a coincidence, a convergence of two issues, and that is the COVID-19 under the National Task Force headed by Nagamutu and Amna Ali and Kathy Hughes and Harman, etc., and the GCOM, what's going on in GCOM Recount. There is a convergence of the two issues, I think conveniently, when you have the COVID task force on 2 occasions refusing to allow additional stations. And in the first instance, reducing and putting ridiculous requirements even beyond what the WHO requires, that people had to change their mask every half an hour. And then it was suddenly, with no scientific basis, changed to every 2 hours. And so, yes, we have to fight the pandemic. And I blame the government that in the 2 months before the first case, they did absolutely nothing. And now 2 months, 10 weeks hence, they have still not improved the way they're managing the COVID virus in our country. And I find it highly coincidental. Maybe I'm conspiratorial, but that I believe that all of a sudden these increasing cases has a lot to do with what's going on in the recount. That's my suspicion. Information I have is that a number of these cases they're now bringing to the fore actually occurred before. And this is my view, that they have been holding back a lot of information in terms of statistics. They've handled the testing and the contact tracing very, very ad hoc and not in a proper manner, not in a way that public health people know to handle it. So I find all of this coincidental, that there's a convergence of the two issues. Mr. Ali is right about the measures that can bring relief to the Guyanese people. People are really hurting economically, socially, psychologically, emotionally in this period because of the elections and because of the pandemic. And the government has sat there just prepared to drag this country through the mud and to let people be, you know, experience more and more difficulties. And I think
You,
there's also the danger where the convergence comes, Michael, where the rumor that has been going on all the time about a total shutdown. I think that is still a risk that can happen. I'm not saying it will happen, but I do believe that there's that risk that we must not be innocent and think that the government's not capable of doing something like that under the guise of COVID-19.
you spoke to the conversions of the two issues.
Yeah, the two
Significant to
crises
that,
actually.
absolutely, and significant to that is the reality in the last 24 hours of the task force denying GCOM permission
Exactly.
to put in place two additional stations.
Absolutely.
The ridiculousness in the first place comes in the fact that GCOM has placed its own responsibility as a constitutional agency in the hands
Yeah.
of the COVID task force.
Yeah. No, I mean, that is why I feel very strongly that the convergence of the two issues would take place in terms of the fact that they're both unraveling and evolving at the same time. But the COVID-19 task force is a political body headed by self-interested people. Those are the persons who want to hold on to government. And therefore, their intervention into the elections issue using the pandemic is one that I think it is unconscionable. They have weaponized COVID-19 as a means to undermine the recount and to drag it on for other political purposes. And so I think we have to be very vigilant in this period. As I said, maybe my conspiracy theory is will be proven wrong, I would like to be proven wrong very much on this case because I think it is so dangerous to our people and our country. The fact that different medical persons are involved in this, it worries me terribly in terms of the Hippocratic Oath, in terms of their responsibility to the public health issues and not to the political issues.
We could touch a bit on the actual objections or what should have been observations in the actual recount. The plethora of these has taken us into the realm of ridiculousness, and that too. You spoke about the convergence. I think that also lends to a deliberate effort to drag this issue on. There's the issue of taking forever to do reports, but this is at the front end of perhaps an overall strategy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I said, these irregularities that they're calling it, and each day the numbers go up. On the 26 and 27, it was 90,000. When you look at these allegations they're making, they're baseless, totally baseless, and meant to spur suspicions, confusions, with a view to ultimately cite their supporters at the end when the declaration is made. And so I think that when one looks at the accusations about the dead voting, it is absolutely absurd. They have not been able to prove in any case that a dead person actually voted. It is all, smoke and mirrors to create confusion, illusions that in fact that they, as I think it was Aubrey Norton said, that they have been cheated. They won the elections. The elections aren't credible. There were all these irregularities, but they won the election, but they were cheated out of 80,000 votes. What a level of absurdity can the APNU even think to put that out in any sensible way to the population? They lost the 2015 elections by 4,526 votes. Their policies and programs were abysmally poor and brought greater poverty and difficulties to the Guyanese people and the business community. How can they now claim that they actually lost about 80,000 votes. It's absolutely absurd. And as I said, it's meant to create this illusion amongst their supporters that they're being cheated out of a greater majority. As Granger said, they had a marginal victory. That is dishonest of Mr. Granger, absolutely dishonest. And again, playing to the public and playing to their supporters that this victimology that they've been cheated out of a larger majority, but they won nevertheless. And this is the dangerous narrative that they're carrying, because when you look at their irregularities, they're baseless, absolutely baseless.
On the issue of basis, it brings to mind.
I'm sorry, you're hearing the planes go over all the time. Sorry about that.
On the issue of baseless, it brings to mind again, we're talking about the plethora of objections, but the attempts by individuals within the commission to add credence to those objections. And there is, of course, that argument now that the commission, whether or not the commission is empowered, we all know the commission isn't to address, investigate, and authenticate the objections being raised.
Absolutely. I think that Anil is absolutely right. Basil Williams is talking a lot of nonsense. The issue is that the Elections Commission is responsible for the management of the elections. Any questions to the credibility of the results or the way in which the elections are managed has to go towards the judiciary. And that has happened in 97, that has happened in 2001, and therefore, and we went in 2015 with an election petition because we had concerns about the results with the fake statements of poll that were produced for Region 4. And our election petition case hasn't been heard up to now. So maybe that's also what the PNC is worried about, that election petition could take several years. I'm sure under the PEP it wouldn't, because the judiciary would not face appeal after appeal by Mr. Lowenfield himself. The reason why our petition has been heard is because of Mr. Lowenfield. He paid, GCOM paid for the lawyer to appeal the Chief Justice Ian Chang's ruling that the petition proceed, and the matter is stuck at the appeal court. So that that is where it is. That is what the law says. That's what the Constitution says. And I'm very disturbed when I read that. I hear that Mr. Alexander, as I said, who is the mouthpiece of Claudette Singh. How is it that she will reprimand Says Gunraj, the PVB commissioner, appointed commissioner, for a statement he makes, but every day Alexander is out there before the media speaking on behalf of the commission, and she doesn't reprimand him. So I'm quite correct, I believe, in that Alexander is her mouthpiece. He is doing, between her and him, they have an agreement on what is to be said, and therefore I can't doubt what he's saying. The issue that he pointed out, that the chairperson will be writing to the chief immigration officer to obtain information on immigration records. This is not the role of the commissioner, of the chairman, or of the commission itself. There was a claims and objection period. The PNC put up almost 16,000 objections. They were thrown out region after region, and that is region 3, region 5, region 7, region 9, where they made all these objections. What were the basis? They could not produce certificates of death, nor could they produce and in some cases people came forward and said, I'm alive. In other cases, people said, you're saying I've immigrated, I'm right here. And so they have used some of those same names back again. And in this case, I believe have gone to the GRO and uplifted death certificates for a number of those people. But the fact is, did those people vote or not? They didn't. And so again, it's these smoke and mirrors narrative of trying to create confusion and inciting, I believe, their supporters later down the line.
Ms. Gail Teixiera, I'd like to thank you for this brief discussion we've had, and I'm looking forward to engaging you again on these and other subjects. I guess there's a delay, and I'm also
everything goes well, and that I
Okay, the confusion comes as a consequence of there's a delay. Of course, we are having these discussions from two separate locations, and sometimes there is a couple seconds between the questions and responses. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining me on this program. Join my colleague Utod this afternoon at 4 p.m. and of course my colleague Edward Lane at 8 p.m. as we continue these discussions on Recount Wash. I'm your host, Michael Gordon, on behalf of myself and PVPC candidate and PVP executive, Gail Teixiera. Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.